A street kid clutching a plastic bag walked into the most powerful law firm in New York. "Translate this, and I'll give you $1 million. The CEO laughed. Then the boy answered in 5 languages. The security guard's hand shot toward Elias before the revolving door had fully released him into the lobby. 12 years old, barefoot, clutching a plastic grocery bag like it contained the world's last hope. Elias had seen that hand reach for radios, for phones, for weapons enough times to know what came next. But today he didn't run. Inside the bag was a letter. Inside the letter was a promise his mother had made 3 days before dying in his arms. A promise that this building, Sterling & Associates International, held answers, held justice, held something that belonged to him and his 8-year-old sister Maya, currently hiding in the alley outside because she was too scared to come in. "Stop right there, kid." The guard's name tag read, Peterson. His voice carried the particular weariness of someone who'd removed homeless people from luxury buildings for 20 years. "Private property. You need an appointment." Elias's English came out clear despite his racing heart. "I need to see Richard Sterling. I have something he needs to translate." The word translate rippled through the marble lobby like a stone thrown into still water. This wasn't just any law firm. Sterling & Associates specialized in international law, handled documents in dozens of languages, charged clients thousands of dollars per page for expert translations. And here stood a filthy street kid claiming he had something that needed translating. Peterson's expression shifted from annoyed to almost amused. "You have something that needs translating? Kid, do you have any idea what translation services cost here?" "I know exactly what they cost," Elias said, pulling a crumpled envelope from his bag. "That's why I'm here. My mother said this firm handled the original document. Said they'd understand why it matters." "Your mother?" Peterson's tone made it clear what he thought of that. "And where is she?" "Dead." The word came out flat, emotionless, because Elias had said it so many times in the last 72 hours that it had stopped feeling real. 3 days ago. Pneumonia. She couldn't afford the hospital. Something flickered in Peterson's eyes. Pity, maybe, or discomfort, but his hand remained on his radio. "I'm sorry about your mother, son." "But this isn't... Is there a problem here?" The voice cut through the lobby like a blade. Elias turned to see a man descending the curved staircase with the kind of presence that made everyone in the room instinctively straighten their posture. Mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, a suit that probably cost more than most people earned in 6 months. He moved like someone who'd never questioned his right to be anywhere. Richard Sterling. Elias recognized him from the photographs his mother had kept hidden in a shoebox under their mattress. Photographs she'd refused to explain, but had looked at sometimes with an expression Elias had never understood until now. It was grief. She'd been grieving someone who was still alive. "Sir, just a situation with..." Peterson began. "A street rat who wandered in," Richard finished, his eyes raking over Elias with open disgust. "Peterson, call social services. The city has shelters for this sort of thing." "I'm not looking for a shelter," Elias said, louder than he intended. "I'm looking for someone who can read this." He pulled a document from the envelope, pages yellowed with age, covered in what looked like multiple languages, beautiful calligraphy that had faded but remained legible. His mother's most precious possession, hidden away for years, only revealed to him on her deathbed with whispered instructions he hadn't fully understood until walking into this building. Richard's eyes landed on the document, and something changed in his face. Just for a second. A flicker of recognition, quickly masked, but Elias saw it. "Where did you get that?" Richard's voice had gone very quiet. "My mother, Isabella Reyes. She worked here. 11 years ago." The lobby went silent. Even the ambient noise of the air conditioning seemed to pause. Elias watched Richard's face cycle through emotions too quickly to name. "Isabella Reyes," Richard repeated slowly. "The cleaning woman." The way he said it, the dismissiveness, the contempt, made Elias's hands clench into fists. She wasn't just a cleaning woman. She was a translator. She spoke 6 languages. She helped you. She was hired to empty trash cans and scrub toilets. Richard cut him off. "Which she did adequately until she quit without notice and disappeared. If she told you anything different, she was lying." "She wasn't lying." Elias's shout echoed off marble. Around them, lawyers and clients froze, watching. "She translated documents for you. Important documents. Documents like this one. Richard descended the last few steps, his expression hardening into something cruel. Let me tell you something about your mother, boy. Isabella Reyes was a nobody who spoke broken Spanish and cleaned my floors. Whatever fantasy she filled your head with, whatever delusions she built up over the years, they were just that, delusions. Then prove it, Elias said, and he was surprised by how steady his voice sounded despite the tears burning behind his eyes. This document. You said she was nobody. You said she couldn't translate. So prove it. Read this. Tell me what it says. Richard's laugh was sharp, mocking. You think I'm going to stand here and play games with a street urchin? I think you can't read it, Elias shot back. I think my mother could do something you can't. I think that's why you're angry. The air in the lobby crackled with tension. Richard's face flushed red, and several witnesses actually took steps backward, sensing danger. You want me to translate that? Richard's voice dropped to something dangerous. Fine. I'll do you one better. I'll make you a deal. He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and showed Elias the screen. A number glowed there. $1,000. $1 million, Richard announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. You translate this document accurately in every language it contains, and I'll transfer this money to you right now, on the spot. $1 million for a street rat who probably can't even read English. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Is he serious?" Completely serious, Richard continued, warming to his performance. But here's the catch. You have to translate it perfectly, every word, every language. And I'm going to verify every single translation with our expert staff. One mistake, one mispronunciation, one wrong word, and you get nothing. Nothing except being thrown out of this building for wasting everyone's time. He smiled, and it was the smile of a predator playing with prey. So, what do you say, boy? Want to put your mother's legacy to the test? Want to prove that Isabella Reyes was something more than a cleaning woman with delusions? Elias looked at the document in his hands, at the languages his mother had taught him by candlelight in their one-room apartment. Spanish first, her native tongue, spoken with the musical lilt of her hometown in Colombia. Then Mandarin, learned from the Chinese family next door who'd paid her in language lessons instead of cash for babysitting. Arabic, picked up from the Syrian refugees in their building who'd needed her help filling out forms. French, taught from library books she'd borrowed and made Elias read aloud until his pronunciation was perfect. And English, always English, the language of survival, she'd called it. The language that could open doors or slam them shut depending on how well you wielded it. My mother used to say something, Elias said quietly, looking up at Richard. She said that language is power. That people who speak many languages can build bridges, but people who only speak one language can only build walls. Touching, Richard sneered. Is that a yes or a no? It's a yes, Elias said. I'll translate your document. Every word. Every language. Excellent. Richard gestured to someone Elias hadn't noticed before. A woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a tablet in her hands. Jennifer, my assistant, will record everything. We'll verify each translation independently, and when you fail, because you will fail, you'll leave this building and never come back. Understood? Understood, Elias said. Richard held out the document. Elias took it with hands that only shook slightly. As their fingers touched, Richard leaned close enough that only Elias could hear his whispered words. Your mother was nothing, a nobody, and so are you. This little show is just so everyone here can watch you fail and be reminded why people like you stay in the gutter where you belong. Elias met his eyes. My mother taught me one more thing. She said the biggest difference between rich people and poor people isn't money. It's whether they remember what it's like to have nothing. Profound, Richard said sarcastically, stepping back. Now translate. Or are you stalling because you're already realizing you're in over your head? Elias looked down at the document. His eyes scanned the first section, elaborate script in Spanish, the formal kind used in legal documents. His mother's handwriting in the margins, notes she'd made, corrections she'd offered. And suddenly, Elias understood why she'd kept this document hidden. Why she'd looked at Richard Sterling's photograph with such sadness. Why she'd made him promise, with her last breaths, to bring this here. This wasn't just a translation test. This was evidence. Proof of work his mother had done, work Richard had claimed as his own, work that had built this firm's reputation while Isabella Reyes had scrubbed floors and pretended she couldn't understand the conversations happening around her. "Well," Richard demanded, "cat got your tongue? Ready to admit defeat?" Elias cleared his throat. And then, in perfect Spanish, the Spanish of educated translators, not the street Spanish Richard probably expected, he began to read. En el caso de la disputa fronteriza entre las naciones de... Richard's face went white. Jennifer's fingers froze over her tablet. The crowd of lawyers and clients leaned forward, recognition dawning in some of their faces. "Wait," someone said. "That's the Cordova Treaty case." "That's impossible," Richard cut them off. "This kid can't possibly—" But Elias was already switching to Mandarin, his pronunciation flawless, the tones perfect. His mother's voice echoing in his memory. "Tones matter, mi amor. One wrong tone changes everything." Then Arabic, flowing like water. The guttural sounds his mother had struggled with but mastered, teaching Elias through patience and repetition until he could recite passages from memory. Then French, elegant and precise, every liaison perfect, every silent letter honored. And finally, back to English, translating the implications of each section, explaining the legal nuances in language so clear and professional that several lawyers actually pulled out their own phones to verify what they were hearing. When Elias finished, the lobby was completely silent. Richard Sterling stood frozen, his face cycling through shock, rage, and something that looked almost like fear. That's impossible," Richard finally managed. "You're 12 years old. You're homeless. You can't possibly—" "My mother taught me," Elias said simply. "Every night. For years. She said knowledge was the one thing nobody could steal from us. That languages were bridges to futures we couldn't yet imagine." He held up the document. "This is the Cordova Treaty translation. The one that made Sterling and Associates famous 11 years ago. The one that brought in $50 million in new business. The one you claimed you personally translated." Elias's voice grew stronger. "But you didn't translate it. My mother did. Isabella Reyes. The cleaning woman who spoke 6 languages. She did the work. You took the credit. She asked for recognition, for fair payment for her skills. And you fired her. Told her nobody would believe that a woman who cleaned toilets could do this kind of work." He could see it in Richard's face. The truth. All of it. "My mother kept copies," Elias continued. "She kept notes. She kept evidence. And she taught me every language she knew because she said someday, someone would need to know the truth. Someone would need to be able to prove what really happened." "This is absurd," Richard sputtered, but his voice lacked conviction. "Anyone could claim—" "Mr. Sterling," Jennifer's voice cut through the denial. The assistant looked pale, her tablet showing something that made her hands shake. "I just pulled the original files from our archives, from 11 years ago. The translation notes are in the metadata. They're all tagged with the user ID, IEL923. "What?" Richard spun to face her. "Isabella E. Reyes, September 2023. Jennifer's voice was barely above a whisper. "She did do the work. All of it. The entire Cordova Treaty translation. Every language. Every page." The lobby erupted. Lawyers shouting questions. Clients backing toward the exits. Richard's face went from red to white to something approaching gray. "You owe him $1 million, someone said. "He translated it perfectly," another voice confirmed. "I've handled Mandarin contracts for 20 years. That kid's pronunciation is better than most of our professional translators." "Where did a homeless child learn?" "His mother taught him," Jennifer said, still staring at her tablet, tears forming in her eyes. "Oh God. Isabella Reyes. I remember her. She used to come in early before anyone else arrived. I'd hear her in Mr. Sterling's office sometimes, talking in different languages, working on translations. He told us she was just cleaning, that we should ignore her." "That's enough!" Richard's shout silenced the room. "This is my firm. I built this business. Some street kid with a wild story doesn't change. It's not a wild story." The new voice came from the back of the lobby. An elderly man stepped forward, expensive coat, briefcase that screamed old money. "My name is Thomas Cordova. That treaty bears my family's name. I hired Sterling and Associates 11 years ago specifically because Richard Sterling convinced me he was a polyglot who could handle the complex multilingual negotiations. Thomas walked closer, his eyes locked on Richard. But I remember Isabella. She was the one who actually fixed the errors in my Spanish, who caught the mistranslation that would have cost my family millions. I asked Richard about her. He told me she was just support staff. She was just... Richard tried. She was a master translator. Thomas interrupted. And you stole her work, claimed it as your own, built your reputation on her skill while paying her minimum wage to scrub your floors. He turned to Elias. Your mother was remarkable, son. I offered to hire her directly, you know. She refused. Said she couldn't take work from Mr. Sterling because she had children to feed and couldn't risk losing her steady job. Elias felt something break open in his chest. She never told me. She never said she could have. She protected you, Thomas said gently. The way mothers do. Even when it cost her everything. Richard was backing toward the stairs now, his confidence shattered. I need to consult with... The board will... That's impossible, Richard finally managed. You're 12 years old. You're homeless. You can't possibly know what you're saying. Every word was perfect, Jennifer whispered, still staring at her tablet. I've been checking his translations in real time using our verification software. Every language, every phrase. He didn't make a single mistake. Richard's face went from white to red. I don't care what some software says. This is clearly a trick, a scam. Someone coached this kid? Nobody coached me, Elias said quietly. My mother taught me. The same way she would have taught your translators if you'd ever bothered to ask what she could do instead of assuming she was only good for cleaning. Your mother was the woman who did the Cordova Treaty translation. Elias held up the document. This is her work. Her notes are in the margins. Her handwriting. 11 years old. Richard laughed, but it sounded forced. That's absurd. I personally handled the Cordova Treaty. It made this firm's reputation. I'm not going to stand here and let some street rat claim. Then check your files, Elias challenged. The original translation files. They'll have timestamps, digital signatures, metadata showing who actually did the work. For just a second, something like panic flashed across Richard's face. Then he smoothed it away, recovering his composure. Our files are confidential, protected. I'm not giving a child access to... I'll check them. Jennifer's voice cut through the tension. Every eye turned to her. The assistant stood straighter, her jaw set. I have access to the archives. I can pull the original Cordova files right now. Jennifer. Richard's voice carried a warning. You're overstepping. You made a public challenge, she said, not backing down. In front of 50 witnesses. You said if he translated the document perfectly, you'd pay him $1 million. He did it. Now there's a question about the document's origin. We need to verify. As your employer, I'm ordering you. As a witness to a legal agreement, I'm documenting the truth, Jennifer interrupted. Her fingers moved across her tablet. I'm pulling the files now. The lobby went silent. Elias could hear his own heartbeat. Somewhere outside, Maya was waiting, scared and alone. But he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Everything hinged on what those files would show. Jennifer's face went pale as she read her screen. Oh my God. What? Multiple voices asked at once. The original Cordova Treaty files. All of them. The Spanish translation. The Mandarin. The Arabic. The French. Jennifer looked up, her eyes wide with shock. They're all tagged with user ID IE0923. Created by... She swallowed hard. Isabella E. Reyes. September 2023. The lobby exploded into chaos. Lawyers shouting. Clients demanding explanations. Someone yelling about fraud. Someone else already on the phone with what sounded like a news station. Richard's face had gone gray. Those files were tampered with. Obviously someone... The metadata is encrypted, Jennifer said, her voice shaking. Time stamped by our security system. These files show Isabella Reyes working in your office, Mr. Sterling. Late nights, early mornings, hundreds of hours of translation work, all credited to you. She looked up at Richard, and there was something like betrayal in her eyes. You didn't do the Cordova translation. She did. You took credit for her work. That's insane, Richard sputtered. I'm not going to stand here and... Where did your mother work? Jennifer asked Elias urgently. Besides here? Nowhere else that year, Elias said. She worked here full-time, nights, sometimes 16-hour shifts. She'd come home exhausted, her hands raw from cleaning chemicals, but she'd still sit with me and Maya and teach us languages. She said, his voice cracked. She said she was storing up knowledge to give us when we needed it. Jennifer was crying now, not bothering to hide it. I remember her. I was new here 11 years ago. I'd see her in Mr. Sterling's office early in the morning, papers spread everywhere. She'd be speaking into a recorder, different languages. I asked Mr. Sterling about it once. He told me she was just cleaning. She was just cleaning, Richard insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Whatever work she might have done was on company time, using company resources. Legally, it belongs to... Legally, you committed fraud. The new voice came from the back of the lobby. An elderly man pushed through the crowd, expensive coat, silver hair, eyes sharp with intelligence. My name is Thomas Cordova. That treaty your firm translated 11 years ago, it was for my family. And I remember the woman who actually fixed all your mistakes. Every head swiveled toward him. Richard looked like he'd seen a ghost. Mr. Cordova, Richard managed.